Howdy, folks. This is Tim Favreau with another edition of the CDL podcast. Educating and entertaining you one mile at a time. Remember to comment, chime in, and tell us your thoughts. This podcast is one man's opinion, not a lecture or sermon. Also, please help spread the word about our show, and thank you for listening. Today's episode is going to be about event recorders. I have a lot of information to cover, so let's get right into it. There are a lot of different event recorders that your fleet can use today. Fortunately, I've had the experience of working with the big four, those being Lytx, SmartDrive, Samsara, and KeepTruckin. In this episode, I'll be talking about the main reason why you should want an event recorder in your vehicle, and not necessarily which one is better than any other. That goes along with somebody trying to say Ford is better than Chevy and Chevy is better than Dodge. I'm not going to go there. And yes, the same thing applies to Kenworth and Peterbilt, yada yada. Not going there. So we'll stick to the topic today, event recorders. What you're going to learn in this episode is why you should have an event recorder, how the insurance industry looks at event recorders, why they are the cheapest form of insurance you can purchase, and why there's no best manufacturer out there. The main point I'm going to get through to you today is you should just get one. Event recorders have many different names. Some people call them dash cams. Other people call them cameras. They are all not the same thing. So let me explain to you what the main differences are between them. An event recorder is similar to a dash cam, but neither one of those are like a camera. A surveillance camera is something that records video 24/7, 365. There's no rhyme or reason to it recording anything. You just turn it on and it starts recording. So it's just usually on a loop that goes on and on. An event recorder or a dash cam works on a specific reason for recording data. So let me explain that a little bit better for you. An event recorder is kind of like the motion detector lights you have outside your house. Once you have them installed, there's power going to it. It's always on, but it's not working. It needs something like a dog going by it or a car pulling into the driveway to actually turn the lights on. That's an event. When it sees that event happen, the lights come on. The same thing is happening in an event recorder or a dash cam. It's always on. It's looking at what is happening out there, but it's looking for a reason to record the data. In the event of a hard brake or a hard acceleration or a hard corner in most cases, all of the event recorders I spoke about before will trigger. So the event recorder's on in the background, you're driving down the road for an hour, there's nothing being sent to your managers, there's nothing being recorded to the SD card until you actually all of a sudden have a car pull out in front of you and you hit the brakes really hard. That's what is called a trigger, and then it starts recording the data so it can be reviewed by your safety manager or by yourself later in the case of an accident or a reason to take a look at that data. In other cases, you could be accelerating very rapidly from a red light, and it could record that as an actual event as well. Or if you're taking a corner, getting on an expressway or getting off of an expressway in a cloverleaf loop, it could also trigger an event. Another way to think about an event being triggered is if you have a smartphone and you're looking at a picture, you can hold your phone vertically, and when you turn the phone to the left or right, it changes the orientation of the picture from maybe being smaller to larger. You're going from portrait to a landscape view. When you do that, your phone is seeing that as an event, and it responds by changing the aspect ratio of the picture you're looking at. That same kind of technology, or similar technology, the event recorder that sees the event that triggers it for recording. Now, you can go to any one of the company websites I said earlier and get detailed specifications of how their equipment work. That's beyond the scope of this podcast. I'm not going to get into that. What I want to get into is why you should have this in your vehicle. So when the event is triggered and it starts recording, what usually happens is it takes a look at the previous 10 seconds before the event and then records from the time of the event for 10 more seconds. So you'll get a 20 to 30 second video of what happened during that event trigger time. Then it time and date stamps that and sends it off either to the SD card inside the device or out to the cloud so your manager or somebody else can review what just triggered that event. To give you an example of what I'm talking about, just yesterday, one of my drivers, Craig, was coming out of one of our customer stops, and as he was approaching a stop sign, there was a Jeep on the other side of the intersection. Our event recorder recorded an accident that they wouldn't have normally had the footage for. I have included a link to that video in the show notes. It is an accident, but you don't see anybody get hurt. There's no blood or gore. This is a family show, so it's going to show a violent accident. And if you're susceptible to violence and not wanting to see that, then I highly suggest that you don't watch the video. So there's your warning on the video. You'll have to go to the show notes to click on it. But what you will see in the video is that the Jeep starts to proceed across the intersection toward our truck and gets hit from the side or T-bone from a pickup truck. Now our driver, having witnessed all of this, wasn't even thinking of the event recorder right then and there, put his truck in park and got out and rendered assistance to the people that were involved in the accident. You can't see that in the clip because the clip stops before that happens. Now, because this wasn't an event in our vehicle, that 10 seconds before and 10 seconds after never happened in our vehicle. So there was no event triggered in our vehicle for that. And this is the difference between an event recorder and a dash cam. A dash cam will only record the events as they actually happen in real time. There may be some dash cams out there that work more like an event recorder than a dash cam. I have not come across those yet. I know that all of the event recorders I've worked with do more than just regular dash cams. What an event recorder does is it is very similar, again, as I said, to the outdoor light on your house. It always has power going to it. So it's always in a state of almost recording a video for you, and it's buffering as time goes along. It buffers and records and deletes, buffers, records, deletes, until something happens on an event that says, hey, I need to keep this. Don't delete it afterwards. So when Craig called me yesterday and let me know, hey, Tim, I just witnessed an accident, and I thought about it afterwards when I saw that, oh yeah, I have an event recorder in the truck. Maybe we actually got the footage from this. So we had to narrow down the exact time when this happened. And it was through trial and error I got down to the exact minute of the accident. And that's what you see in the video footage that I put in the show notes. When I had to go to our event recorder provider, I had to request 1 minute of the video in that time. So in this block of time, they had to go back into the buffer database and say, okay, he needs this section here, and it doesn't know what I'm looking for. So I just asked for a specific time and it sent it to me. And I didn't see anything in it, so I had to ask for another section of this time, and it didn't have anything. Eventually I found that one crucial minute, which you can see. That video is only kept in the buffer for about 24 to 36 hours before it just winds up going away forever. Because if you don't do anything with it, the event recorder needs to keep going and that space just disappears. So it's not always something that's going to be there. Now, you can buy event recorders that you can put large memory cards in, or you can buy more cloud storage. However, if you do that, it just costs you a lot more money. I wouldn't suggest you do that unless you really feel a need. A smaller cloud storage package with a certain amount of data on the buffer, in the years that I've been using this, I have found to be more than adequate. So that basically gives you an idea of how they work, both as an event recorder and as a dash cam, but in neither case is a camera. Cameras in this type of application are really not a good choice. So with that being said, let's get into more of the differences in event recorders. For our fleet, we have outward facing cameras only. These event recorders can be purchased with just outward facing or outward and inward, or if you really want to get in depth with your setup, you can do outward, inward, both sides of your tractor trailer. You can mount them on each mirror if you wanted to, or on the sides of the tractor. I've seen mounts where people have put them on the back of the tractor so you can take a look at the trailer. They've put them at the very top of the tractor, so if you have a dump trailer, you can actually see the load or what's going on with it and take a look at your tarp that you have either on the dump or on the flatbed so you can view that while driving down the road. And in some cases, I've even seen people put a fifth camera all the way on the back of the trailer. I highly recommend that you at least get a forward, outward-facing event recorder. If you have that set up, then that will cover 99% of the incidents that you'll have going on down the road. Also, you can have it with audio on or audio off. It's usually a setting that you can do, or if you're with a fleet, the fleet can have that turned on or turned off. I have found a lot of drivers don't want to have anybody listening to them, so you can easily have this turned off if that is a concern of yours. I myself advise that you have it turned on. In a lot of cases of what's going on, especially at night, your eyes are better than an event recorder in most cases. So you're going to be able to see details and things that the event recorder may get wrong. You can actually shout out the license plate number or other details that you want remembered right then and there at the time of the incident on what's going on. You can see things that are maybe off to the left or to the right that the event recorder won't catch. If you're talking to the event recorder, then you have these things taken care of. I think it's a really important thing to have. If you don't, that's fine. You can have that turned off. I am also a very big proponent of having an inward-facing event recorder, so it shows that you are alert and that you are doing everything you needed to do while driving and operating your commercial motor vehicle. Most drivers I have worked with have found that this, they feel, is an invasion of their privacy. They don't want Big Brother watching them. And I don't think it's anything about Big Brother watching them. I think this goes along the lines of you can prove that you are doing what you were supposed to be doing when you were supposed to be doing it. I have had drivers say, look, it's my sleeper. When I go to bed, I don't want somebody watching me sleep. Which then I immediately counter with, you have no expectation of privacy while you're in your tractor trailer. When you get into the sleeper, you have the curtains and you have everything that you can do to shut the outside world out so nobody can see you when you're sleeping and what you're doing back in your bunk. That's why you have curtains. No matter what you do, you can never forget that you have windows throughout the whole front of your vehicle. So another truck sitting alongside of you can see right into your cab at all times. A pedestrian driving by in a car or walking through a parking lot can see right into your cab at all times. So unless you have something that totally blocks all of that out, then they can see right into your sleeper. You can't win that argument with me. You're never going to win that. They can see everything. Now, I know there's going to be some of you that are listening to this that say, well, Tim, I have curtains that go all the way out to my windshield. Then that's great. If you want to close all of those and you do that on a regular basis, fine, cover up the event recorder. Then problem solved either way. My portion of the argument for having an inward-facing one is it catches the drivers that are texting while driving, that are not wearing their seatbelt while driving, that are falling asleep while they're driving. And these are all very serious incidents that happen, unfortunately, quite often. If Google is your favorite search engine, use that, or pick whichever search engine is your favorite. But it doesn't take long to find people that have been distracted driving, texting while driving, not wearing their seatbelts, falling asleep behind the wheel, where they actually have it on video. And I think that's a very important factor to have when you're trying to say you're one of those drivers that are not doing that. I don't care where you live in the United States right now. When you're driving up and down any interstate, everyone has seen those billboards with the hammer on there, or such and such attorney firm that goes after those bad truckers that are out there that are tearing up the whole world and, killing puppies and kicking cats and all of that. There's a million of those billboards across the nation, and they're making us all look like we're horrible people out there when we know we're not. There are handfuls of drivers out there that are texting while driving and not wearing their seatbelts and driving up insurance costs for their companies and themselves because they're not following the rules and regulations that are out there. You don't have to agree with them. There's a lot of things I don't agree with, but that doesn't change the fact that they are laws, rules, and regulations. If you're one of those people that's in an area and you know you're not supposed to be texting, then put the phone down. If you're going to put my company at risk for your bad habit, I have an issue with that. I would think that so would you. And the easiest way to stop that, in my opinion, is with an inward-facing camera. However, I do respect your rights, and if you don't want to have one in your tractor, by all means, don't put one in there. When I worked for US Express had outward-facing only. They had put in event recorders that could look inward at that time, but they deactivated that and covered all the lenses in the fleet, so there was absolutely no way they could watch what was going on. I have dealt with Samsara's outward-facing, SmartDrive's outward-facing, and my current company I'm working with at the time that I am posting this podcast is using KeepTruckin event recorders, and all of those are outward-facing with no audio. And what I have found from surveying my drivers is that 75% of them are very, very happy with this. They like the outward-facing, they like the no audio, and in the last year, I've had more and more of them say, I wish I would have done this a long time ago. For the remaining 25% that are resisting having an event recorder in their truck, I really don't understand why, but that number again is shrinking every day. And let me give you another great example of this. I have another driver who I'm not going to shame right now here that did have an event recorder in his truck, but he refused to keep it plugged in. Every time he got into his truck, he'd always have another reason to say, I deactivated it. I didn't want to have it plugged in. I don't want people watching what I'm doing. And again, I can understand that. You have your rights, and that's up to you. When you're an owner-operator, you can do what you want. Here's where the story gets bad. He had just had $6,000 of engine work done to his truck. From his maintenance account. He had everything going. He's working really hard, doing a great job for us. A lady runs a red light and T-bones him. Totally wrecks the front end of his truck. He's going to have to get a new motor out of this. He's going to have to do a lot of work on getting this taken care of and getting his vehicle repaired. And I think it's been 6 weeks now, and I'm not quite sure if his truck's back on the road or not yet. I'll check with him after this episode and maybe update this in the show notes, but I don't think he's got his truck back yet. The first call he made was to the safety department and wanted to know what we could do to help him get his truck fixed faster. Because he goes, Tim, I just spent $6,000 getting this up here. I can't afford to be off work for the next couple of months because of this. My immediate response to him was, I understand that. Did you have your event recorder plugged in? No, Tim, I didn't. I said, man, if you had that event recorder plugged in, you realize we could have played back the footage, showed the light was green your way, and that you were going through the intersection the way you were supposed to be, and that would have made this a slam dunk and probably removed or shortened the process of remediation on this from 2 months to probably 2 weeks, or maybe even as short as 2 days. And he goes, yeah, I understand that, Tim. I know I should have had it plugged in. I guarantee you I'll have it plugged in going in forward from this. And I said, I'm glad. But again, that's up to you, and it's not going to help you now. So I think you get the idea of why you should have an event recorder in your truck. And you should probably get one in today. Now, I've had other owner-operators that I've talked to about this, getting them in their trucks. And one of them was Leroy. Leroy finally retired last year at 78 years old. He has 10.6 million accident-free miles that he has recorded in an over 50-year career. So we really don't know what the upper limit of miles he has. We just have 10.6 million recorded miles accident-free. And when I started talking to Leroy about event recorders, he goes, yep, Tim, already got them. And I go, what do you mean you already got them? He says, I got 4. I said, you have 4? He says, yep, inward facing, outward facing, and one on each side of the truck. Then he went and explained to me why he went and got the ones for the sides of his truck. Because over his career, he's had several 4-wheelers over time bounce off him. And when they bounced off him, they tried to cite him for damages. And each time, there was something somewhere that was able to show that it wasn't his fault, which we all know is normally not the case. And since he had those event recorders put in outside the vehicle, he had caught 3 more accidents, or 4-wheelers hitting him on the passenger side, where you can see they just merged right into him, and it was totally not his fault. Absolutely amazing when you're trying to keep an accident-free record and you can keep proving that it's not your fault. So the event recorders were something he decided with a long time ago before I came to work for my current company, and he firmly believed in. So I'd love to make him an ambassador for all owner-operators out there on why they should have event recorders. So now I want to get on to, as a safety manager, why I feel dash cams are such an important thing for fleets today. As a safety manager, each day I take a look at my region for the Midwest that I cover, and I look at my driver's events, and I see hard brakes and hard corners and hard accelerations, among a whole bunch of other things that happen every day. I have probably an average of 100 incidents that I have to take a look each day. That's 100 incidents where that's 10 seconds before and 10 seconds after what an actual triggered event was. And I'd say out of those 100 events I look at each day, there is only about 10% that are really true events. The other 90% I can look at and say, all right, this is just a false positive. This driver was braking a little hard because the light caught him off guard and he doesn't quite know the Smith system or something like that. That'll lead me into an opportunity to have a discussion with the driver. Now, during my driving career and now through my safety career, I've spent a lot of time training people on how to properly drive safely down the road, using the Smith system, using a lot of different defensive driving techniques, which I'll cover in a lot of episodes here on the CDL podcast. However, the event recorders allow me to take a look at where drivers are having issues with stale green lights, or with distracted driving, or with not setting themselves up properly for corners, where when I go to meet with the driver at a safety meeting, or they happen to come to my terminal, Or maybe it's just when I can pick up the phone and give him a call and say, hey, Joe, when it's safe and legal to do so, give me a call back. I'd like to talk to you about an event I saw earlier today and get your words on it, get the idea of what happened on here. It allows me to have great talking points with my drivers and to have those critical discussions in letting them know, hey, I saw what was going on the road today and I saw that four-wheeler cut you off. It's amazing. Your reaction time and the way you handled it was incredible. For an example, I have a great video where one of my drivers is driving by a truck stop where the four-wheeler entrance is, and he's heading to the truck entrance, which is on the other side of that. Just as he rolls up upon a four-wheeler, it waited way past the time it should have. It pulled right out in front of him. Had my driver been doing anything at that time other than paying direct attention to what was in front of him, he would have hit that car and probably killed the driver. Our driver was going about 30 miles an hour, maybe 28 miles an hour from what I remember here, but he was literally less than 100 feet from the car when it pulled out in front of him. So had he been adjusting the radio or glancing in a mirror or grabbing something out of his lunchbox or talking on the CB, anything, had he been distracted with anything, he probably would have hit and killed that driver. And the event recorder caught the hard brake on it, and I got to see that, and I gave him great kudos for that, for being a real safe driver for our company. Without having the event recorders, I don't get to see these events happen. I don't get to have these discussions with the drivers. And I know when I was driving, and I know when you're driving, this happens to you a dozen times a week. So this really gives me an opportunity to see what you go through and to have these discussions and let you know that there's somebody watching what's going on and that we care. And in this case, we appreciate what you do. So this episode's going a little bit long. I don't want to bore you too much with what's going on here. I know a lot of you are shaking your head at me saying, I'm never going to have one of these in my truck. And I also know there's a whole bunch of you out there that have great stories that can tell the other drivers on here about how a dash cam saved you at a truck stop from somebody backing into you or pulling out and hitting your truck while you were sleeping or while you're inside taking a shower or anything. Please share those stories with the other drivers here in the comment section and let everybody know that this is something that you approve or disapprove of. I'd love to hear your side of it. As I've said before, this is just one man's opinion. It's not a sermon or a lecture. So with that, everyone, have a great week. And with that, I want to say thank you for tuning in to another edition of the CDL podcast. To learn more, connect with our community, and get free resources to build your career, please go to thecdlpodcast.com.